What's up, humans? I'm Enzo with Frequency, and this video is late. Now, I started a video on spiritual freedom on time and everything, but I just wasn't feeling it, at least not at the moment, because neither my heart nor my soul has really been in it these past couple weeks, and so I just needed to regroup. And while doing so, I needed to rethink what it was that I wanted to speak on. So it felt appropriate to talk about what it feels like sometimes to be awake when life seems less than perfect. Now, at times when I catch that type of vibe, one of a lower frequency, is usually associated with unpleasant feelings, obviously, but by the way it feels, I'm sometimes reminded of my experience with the dark night of the soul and what it felt like during that period of life, which was very strange. It was as if time was speeding up faster than ever, but also at a complete standstill simultaneously. But nowadays, these periods usually only show up and last a short time, and I know when they do show up, it's because there's something in myself that needs to be confronted. I need to look internally and see what's going on. That's just how these things work. Everything is an opportunity for growth, learning, or experience. So rather than suppress the emotions, I've learned to feel into them so that I can try and understand what exactly is going on, especially with how it's making me feel, because we are emotional creatures that operate from and respond to vibratory states of being. So by allowing the process to happen and move through you, it's easier to address whatever thing needs it. This is what is meant by raising your vibrations. It's tuning into the actual feelings of the emotions that you are experiencing, because that feeling is the frequency. But since I am new to this whole video thing, it was disappointing to miss my commitment. I'm genuinely interested in helping others by sharing raw perspectives on my experiences from topics that I've gained value from, and by helping people find resources that are best for their personal growth. My hope is just to give practical tips and different perspectives, and to help get you thinking of things differently, and for sure thinking for yourself. However, I'm still on my journey also. I'm just learning as I go, and I'm picking up clues along the way, just like everyone else. And it's always interesting to see how different people interpret these things and to see how they assimilate their own journeys back home, because this is a divine scavenger hunt. It's the grand divine puzzle, and it's personal to each of us. So this is why you will never hear me try to tell anyone, what they should believe, what path they should follow, or how they should do their spiritual practices. I will only speak on things that I know to be right and true to the best of my ability, but that only means it's right from my path. You must decipher what's for you and what is not for you. So long story short, I changed the video, and I see this as an opportunity to be open about what a spiritual awakening is like beyond the sunshine and rainbows, the darker side of the truth about a spiritual awakening, at least from my perspective. I obviously can't speak for anyone other than myself, but I have a feeling that a few people may be able to relate. Before we dive in, here's some context on how my awakening happened for me. When I found out the truth of this reality, it was like a Mike Tyson punch in the face. It was very abrupt when it happened. At the time, I was experimenting heavily with DMT, and that was pretty much where it all started. So when I seen beyond the veil, I had absolutely zero knowledge of anything spiritual, anything. Like literally, I knew nothing other than the Christian said, choose Jesus or go to hell and burn for eternity with Satan. And like many other people who were misled, I was told every other religion was wrong, and so was questioning any of it. Now, I had a hard enough time believing the church already, but I kept my doubts to myself and I went through the motions. But that was my baseline understanding. I will say, however, a few months before my awakening happened, I had genuinely started seeking God and even attempting to follow Jesus. I even scheduled a baptism because I did truly want to turn my life around, and none of my ways ever seemed to work. So I did have a true desire for God before having my experiences, and I fully believe that that is the only reason what was shown to me was. But again, that was as far as I got. I still didn't know anything, not even one full verse in the Bible. So when I had the most profound experiences of my earthly existence, I was kind of traumatized in a way. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't deny that those experiences were more real than what this reality is. I tried, trust me. And although now I understand things differently, at the time I had never heard of a higher self or an ego, and since I knew nothing, I basically went crazy searching for answers. Now, fast forward to today. I do know myself beyond the ego. I can't say I've completely transcended it. It's a process for sure, and my ego can still be an asshole. But in the beginning, I had a major freak out, to be honest. It was a lot to see with no knowledge of anything. But as the saying goes, after you take the red pill, you really can't go back. And I definitely felt as Neo did when he was freaking out after he was first shown the Matrix. But after I settled down from my 2-week freak out, I had no choice but to try and seek and find answers, to try and make sense of what I had experienced, because I still had no idea what that was, but I also knew exactly what that was, and I was a mess. Now, I do plan to do a video on my DMT journeys, but for now, after a life-changing night during a ridiculous 3-hour straight journey, that was when it really happened, and I came back to life with some answers. However, I didn't know the questions for any of those answers, which was a weird thing to experience. It was like Jeopardy, and I was not ready to play. So I went hard into study mode, and for about a year and a half, I basically neglected every area of my life other than my son to find those answers. And it was a process in itself, just trying to know where to even start, which is how the idea for the playlist came to be on the Other Side of this channel. But I started with Christianity. It was all I knew. And the only thing I knew now about Christianity was it wasn't accurate as the way it was told to me. And so I quickly became disturbed with what they taught. Now that my soul knew how off these things were, and as quickly as I started to study that topic, I developed some strong feelings towards them, and I knew I had to move on elsewhere. And luckily I did find the true teachings of Yeshua at a later time through other resources. But at first, I was mad as hell at the church, and I felt deceived in the worst way. I remember thinking my first goal was to take down the church. Now, I didn't understand things the way that I do now, so yeah, I'm dramatic like that, plus I'm an Aries, so my fire was burning for people to know the truth. And that simple truth was that we are so much more than what we have allowed ourselves to believe and what society has told the masses we are. And I didn't want people to be confused anymore, and I certainly didn't want people to live a life scared as hell of a hell that was non-existent, which was solely to invoke fear and gain control. But this sent me on a mission to explore other avenues such as Hindu, Buddhism, higher dimensional beings, and eventually down the rabbit holes of the deeper esoteric mysteries. And at some point, I realized a couple things. One, most of these sacred doctrines have similar stories and instructions. And although the characters and the methods change, the end game never really does. It's some sort of transformation of a human dense form to a spirit light body. Alchemy is the end game. And I also realized that what I had seen in those journeys was very much in line with every topic that I was studying, and all of them. But during this time when my dark night was happening, I literally watched my life crumble right before my eyes, and I felt helpless. But also, I didn't care whatsoever, because none of it meant anything anymore, especially material possessions. I basically studied all day and night, every religion and topic I could find. I dove into the esoteric mysteries, studied the greats, the ancients, the philosophers, metaphysics, occult knowledge, literally everything I could find, because all of this information was brand new to me, and I was absolutely amazed at how little I actually knew. Like literally, I was fascinated with how ignorant I had been in the best way. And I was just excited to finally be learning. But I wasn't aware of it at the time. I was only actually remembering. So I approached everything like a kid at Christmas. And to be honest, I know deep down that the truths I hold as my own would have been very difficult for me to grasp had I not had the experiences I did and the experiences I continue to have through meditation. I don't think my mind would have allowed these concepts to be contemplated the way that they have been without the experiences of things beyond my perception anyway. And again, I still have these experiences through meditation, and everything that I read is so incomplete compared to what it felt like to be in a different realm in existence, one that is beyond words, and no words would be worthy of describing anyway. So I knew going into it that I knew nothing, and that excited me. So it was easy for me to leave any bias I thought I had behind. I was just purely searching and open to any interpretation that felt right to my soul. So one of the best things I've done for my own personal growth is to realize and understand and even appreciate that in the grand scheme of the cosmos, I don't know shit. And no matter how much knowledge that I am able to acquire, I will still not know anything other than my own limited perspective of a half-truth. And that's exciting. For whatever reason, that excites me. You can never know all the knowledge on this particular field of study. But eventually, I got enough pieces of the puzzle to see some sort of clearing ahead. And so I pursued my own path. And I did so without validation from any other human on what I should be doing or what I should hold as my truth. And I also didn't really have anyone to ask, which probably did help. My one friend who also had experiences with these things wasn't able to relate to my experiences, and I couldn't relate to his, and that's just how these things work. So I had a lot of questions, but quickly realized you must seek your own answers and not by just asking for them. So I put my own puzzle together, and I learned early on to trust my soul and my intuition for what I should hold on to is my personal truth. No one knows your truth but you, not the ego you, the real you. Now, this doesn't mean you can't listen to others and learn from them, of course, but when it comes to your soul's truth, that needs to be the most confidence you have in yourself. There is only one true guru, that is your higher self, the I am God dwelling inside you. Do not give that power away, and do not let someone else tell you something that goes against it. Many of us are now starting to pursue, or already have been pursuing, a higher purpose in life. And that's beautiful. It's also necessary. But in the beginning, and still at times, these negative things come up, such as these past couple weeks for me. Meaning, coming face to face with your own divinity does not come without its own set of challenges. To truly awaken and realize the truth in this reality is basically science fiction, but it literally gives life and existence a much deeper meaning that can only be found with this type of truth. And with this type of truth, knowing can only be experienced. Now, it is destiny for all to go through this process, but for some, it is also the hardest thing you will ever do, because in a sense, it's breaking away from everything you have ever known and done in this life and everything that you have done in past lives. We're still working out karmic issues from lives we don't remember. It's coming to grips with the fact that life is not what we have been led to believe it is. In fact, it's not even close to what the average human thinks it is. And on top of all that, we also have the collective consciousness that we have to deal with and sort of stay away from. So, it's not easy to awaken, and it is work. Now, for me, I still spend the vast majority of my time learning and working on myself. In a way, I don't really know what else to even do. Everything else seems so mundane. Now, there have been some incredible things happen since awakening. I've faced and dealt with many of my issues, and I am certainly not done with this process, and I don't believe that this process is really something that ever ends. But I've come a long way. A big step was overcoming every fear that had ever arose in my being. And this is a step we all must take. I don't fear death, neither should you. I don't fear what's happening in the world, neither should you. I fear nothing because I know at a soul level that it's all divine order. And I trust the universe with my all. So I question nothing about the process. But that doesn't mean that the process is all fun and games. But life certainly has more meaning now. Or less, depending on how you look at it. However, I would absolutely be lying if I said that now life is perfect. Because by walking the narrow path, I've lost most of my friends and relationships, including ones where love was involved. Love took a new and much deeper meaning on, but even with family now, I feel like we are on different planets. Work is a struggle. I own a small business, and if I didn't need myself as an employee, because I'm the only employee, I would have definitely fired myself for efforts or lack of at the time. I feel like I've damn near disconnected from every aspect of human existence, meaning I just have no desire to participate in things that seem interesting to the general masses anymore. And I struggle very much to simply have a normal conversation with anyone. Every conversation that I have, my mind drifts to a higher place, and all my answers or responses are things that are usually beyond the topic at hand, which in reality is actually not, and is usually on point, but it's probably annoying to most. But I see nothing outside of a spiritual existence, from the most simple things such as a sunny day to the most complex of all human problems. All I see is a spiritual answer for all the problems and spiritual blessings for all the good. So now that I'm awake, I've lost the ability to relate to most people. And it's not that I know all the answers by any means. I certainly don't. But I do know that there is always a spiritual answer for every problem. And that's the only one I care to seek, to know, and or present. And so it makes everything that's so-called humanly normal bland and boring, and it makes me appear disconnected to the person that I'm talking to. And often this leaves me feeling like some sort of outcast from the world I live in. And honestly, I know that's the truth. I am very much an outcast from the collective. I don't even like to go into cities for long anymore because the collective energies are so strong, and I can't stand brushing up against those vibes. And at times, life feels like it's at this weird standstill, as if I'm waiting for something drastic to happen or some big event to occur, like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and the planet will be fully 5D. Now, some days I feel on top of it all, spiritually and emotionally, as if life is perfect as is. And some days it's like I took 6 steps backwards and I question everything about myself. Thanks, ego. But it's just like that sometimes. Now, doing videos for me is an outlet that I definitely need for myself, and I definitely hope that I'm able to help others through them. But it's also a way for me to release the things that I'm learning and just get them out of my head and heart and out into the open. And saying things out loud helps me to integrate them as well. But a big part of why I'm doing this is I'm just desperate to connect with other souls that know these things. So this is a way to find my soul group and establish those connections, because the human activities they just all seem so petty now. On one hand, I have this new deep love for humanity. I see the divinity in everyone, and I know that we are all deeply connected. And I even have empathy now, which is definitely new for me, and that sometimes sucks because it's like I could feel others' pains and I could feel their struggles. I mean, there have been times I've either walked or drove past a person, and out of nowhere I will get deeply sad momentarily for no reason at all. And a couple times that happened where I felt sudden extreme hate or violence rise from nowhere. And I know those thoughts aren't mine, but just so you know ahead of time, when you awaken, not everyone can handle the type of energy you will be emitting, and you won't like all the energies that others are emitting the more you become in tune with them. And some people will work themselves right out of your life for seemingly no reason. So when that happens, just get a funnel and a 5-pound bag of sugar, pour that sugar into the gas tank, and let them leave. Obviously, I'm kidding. It doesn't take 5 whole pounds of sugar. But some people simply can't understand what's going on. They don't see what's happening, and they won't be able to until they are ready. And we can't force that for anyone. We can only guide them to see for themselves, and the best way to do that is by example. Each person must seek their own path when it's right for them. But I do long for the day that we all remember that we are part of something greater than ourselves, and we can all just coexist as it was meant to be. Now, another interesting aspect of awakening is, as much as I want to help others, I also want the vast majority of humans to stay far away from me. So it is definitely a love-dislike relationship, because I'm sensitive to energies now, and I can sense vibes much differently, such as how someone feels about me, especially if I'm dropping some wizard knowledge that they don't understand, and I know they're trying to hide how they really feel. And when I talk to someone who is looking at me like I've absolutely lost my mind, at times it will hurt my ego's feelings. However, my higher self don't give a damn. It's self-fulfilled and could care less what you or anyone else thinks. My higher self doesn't even care what I think. And I often have to remind myself that I can't just dumb myself down to talk with the sleeping humans again. But another thing that happens to the awake, and it's even more difficult to see the control of agencies and people that actually think they own things on this planet, when in reality, not one of us own one thing on this planet, including that body that you didn't make when you got here. Now, if anything here was actually ours, we would take it with us when we left, including the body. Generally speaking, that's not what we're doing. So you just start to see the world as it is when you wake up. And that's a beautiful creation that is here for us to explore and experience. You start to see Mother Earth as an actual mother, a living being that provides for us. Everything simple takes on a deep meaning, and many things become profound. The same things that was overlooked before. But then you also start to see what we do to the planet differently. You see the way that we abuse her, and it's just a little different when you're awake, because you know at a soul level that you are actually part of it. But then we have turned around and did dumb things, like the simple fact that we have to pay to live here on this planet still pisses me off, because I see the game and I don't want to play anymore. The things humans do to one another is hard to witness when you're awake. Hell, it's hard to witness when you're asleep. And the way that most people do not think for themselves is mind-blowing. The vast majority of the population do not think for themselves. They look to other humans who aren't even fully thinking for themselves yet for all of the answers. And all of these things bother me deeply now that I have awakened. And now I can't see things any different. I can't unsee anything other than the way it actually is. And we are guests on this planet and actually own none of it. Spiritual stuff for me is now front and center. It's all I can see. Everywhere I look, I see the subtle nature of spirit that has always been and is there now, waiting for us to take notice, waiting for us to stop being ignorant long enough to see what is happening every single moment. And it makes me think of the scene in the first Matrix when the agents are at dinner with Cypher and they're preparing to set up Morpheus to capture him. And while they're eating, Cypher says, paraphrase, "I know the steak isn't real, but ignorance is bliss." Look, I have no desire to continue any longer in ignorance, but I do know exactly where that statement came from, because these truths are not easy to comprehend and accept. And to top it off, the Creator outsmarted itself and all of us with the greatest plot twist in the spiritual journey. And that is, no matter what you personally experience, you can't prove any of it to another person. It is 100% personal and can only be experienced. So make no mistake, the universe has quite the sense of humor. And while this isn't something that I would personally choose, I definitely understand why some people just turn away from life and run and spend the rest of their time in the mountains after they awaken. Because the truth will set you free, but it will break you first. And that is part of the process. But thankfully, there are so many great resources and videos and books. And again, even on this channel, there's a massive playlist of great teachings. But remember this, it is easy to watch others on videos seem as they have it all figured out. It's easy to assume that because they have a title as teacher or some guru, that they are somehow a fully realized being and beyond the human condition. But that is not reality for most, and it's important to not give yourself false expectations while trekking up the mountain of enlightenment. When you go through a spiritual awakening, generally it starts with some sort of spiritual high. It did for me anyways. And everything was so clear all of a sudden. And when you know at a soul level that you are more than this mere human body, that really is one of the best feelings to experience. But that high does start to fade, and then reality starts to set in. It's time for the work, because it doesn't matter what path you choose, what religion, what philosophy, whatever. Every single one of them requires some form of internal work. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to not attempt to overlook this step. Because you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you aren't doing the work, that's a sad waste. As Yeshua stated, faith without works is dead. And we all know that knowledge without application is not wisdom, and wisdom can only be gained through the experiences of knowledge. So once you have started the process, then it's time to face yourself and all the shit that you have created during who knows how many lifetimes. And when you have to come face to face with your own demons, that can be a tough process. It was for me, for sure, because I didn't always choose the light. For the majority of this current incarnation, I just went about life with my own selfish ways, only worried about myself and getting high to cope with this reality. There was many people that I hurt along the way, and I burned almost every bridge that I ever crossed. That's as honest as I could be about it. So when I found myself all alone and broken in a way I had never been before, I knew I had to confront and transmute all that I had done. And that was when I finally saw my soul staring back at me through the mirror. Disappointed as hell in a facepalm position, but still, it was in that moment that I knew it has always been and will always be my own doing. Nothing outside of myself, literally nothing, is responsible for any of it. It was me all along. And it was only inner self-recognition that could change any of it. But along with some guidance from the higher realms and my higher self, I pushed through the very long and very lonely dark night of the soul. For me, it was more like a dark 6-7 month dark night of the soul. Literally longest night ever, and I kept wondering when that night would be over. But there was plenty of times during that period that I genuinely did not want to be here anymore. I just wanted this life to be over. I wanted that process to be over. I probably cussed out the universe a dozen times at least. I mean that. Even though I knew I did all this, I didn't want that to be my truth, but it was. And a part of me, my ego of course, wanted someone or something else to blame outside of myself. The ego has no problem creating havoc, but it doesn't like to be confronted about it. And for most of my current life, I blamed my imaginary demons. And somehow, somewhere along the way, I'd convinced myself that all my issues was not my fault, that I was just a victim of something beyond myself that had control over me. Because, let's be honest, owning your own disaster is not a fun process. But it is necessary, and it is extremely rewarding. And during the dark night of the soul, it's extremely important to allow these things to surface and just face them head on. It will eventually get better, but it is important. It's a very important part of the work. However, sometimes still to this day, I can't believe I signed up for this, especially having memories of being elsewhere, and it just makes me want to go home at times. So awakening can be a lonely road to walk, especially when everyone thinks you've gone crazy, and so you can't really talk to anyone about it. But deep down, they're just still very much asleep. And unfortunately, we can't force another to wake up. So I found peace within myself. I had to. And even that was brand new to me, because I never really even knew what peace felt like. So I can look back at these past couple years, and the changes are immense and dramatic, all for the better. But getting here was far from easy. And from time to time, things will surface again, and it will make it seem as though the dark night is back. But again, those things will surface, such as negative emotions or aspects of our being that are not in alignment. They will surface, and they will come up for a reason. They still need reconciliation. And while it sometimes can seem like a step backwards, it's actually a good thing that they're coming up, and we must face them as they do. Most of the time, when we are learning spiritual truths and concepts, it all revolves around love and beautiful things, amazing things beyond the human perception. And I would absolutely testify to that being the truth of the real reality. But when you have seen or experienced just a glimpse of that higher reality, coming back to this illusion is extra hard, and we're constantly chasing that in our meditations. Now, there's not one thing I would change about my entire journey, and I wouldn't trade this knowledge for all the money in the world. I mean that with every ounce of my being. But I did want to open my heart to you and let you know that if at times you are struggling You aren't the only one. And don't ever allow yourself to think that you are, because we all are at times. Like, this journey is not easy. But the more work you put in through your spiritual practices and meditation, the easier it does become. And the less these moments of distress will pop up and occur. Now, the only reason I'm sharing my personal experiences with you here is to let you see the aspects that aren't so glamorous during the awakening. It's to hopefully help someone else find some peace when they're in the midst of what seems like a never-ending struggle. I was in those shoes. I was all alone. We all were. So something else I want to mention that I hold very near to my heart. For those of us that know we are starseeds and light workers, then we also should know that this work is part of our mission. This is literally what we came here to do, to change this planet. I know, it sounds so dramatic to say it like that, but that is the reality, and that is what keeps me going through all of it, knowing that there is an end in sight for the way that things are now. So, for those of us that know these things, we especially must continue to work on ourselves, and we must strive to anchor the light and the higher frequencies that are coming into Earth. The methods, beliefs, and truths that we hold as our own are personal. You don't need validation from anyone to determine what is best for you to believe. And what you believe means far less than the work and the actions you put in. There is only one being who knows what is absolute best for your personal journey. The only one who truly knows is your very own higher self. So we all must learn to follow our intuition, but we do need to pursue some sort of path and just do the internal work, whatever that may be for you. Seek and you shall find if it's not there yet. But that is how we end the nightmare aspect of this dream and wake up to a new 5D reality. We all feel it happening. We're all aware that it's bigger than any one individual, but only each individual can change themselves, and it will take many individuals to change the planet. In closing, I will say this. I mentioned earlier that, I have overcome fear, and I meant that. Fear has no place in this process. It takes courage and it takes will to walk the narrow path. And to step up and claim your divinity, it takes boldness, and it takes standing firm in your truth, whatever that may be. It's work. It's the greatest and most important work that any human will ever do. And just because we know about the 5D reality, it doesn't mean that any of us are going without any effort. We all must face the mirror of ourselves and the shitstorms that we have created by our own misuse of the universal energy. This is the universal law of the circle. This states what you create, your thoughts, you absolutely will experience yourself. And now, most importantly, we must continue to work on overcoming the lower aspects of our being. That damn ego that does not know it's a fraud is the ultimate internal battle. But you got this. You've always had this. And if you tune into your own higher self, it will show you exactly what to do. So I hope this gives words of encouragement and motivation to stay the course. The rewards for this journey are what we have all been referring to as heaven for so long. And now more than ever, it's within reach, as long as we are all willing to do the internal work. So let's keep at it, stay the course, and know that you aren't alone, even if it feels very much like you are. We are a collective, and those of us that are awake have a job to do. Now, if at any time you need to talk to someone or just vent, I'm here for you, whoever you are. You can test me on this. Reach out, and I will gladly assist you in any way that I can. So, I appreciate you spending a few of your earthly minutes here with me today, and until next Thursday, I send wishes of peace profound.